Okay, so in this video I'm going to briefly go over what we call place constructions. Place constructions are going to involve three particular kinds of nouns. That would be cities, towns, and small islands. Often people ask, what does it mean to be a small island? There's no definite definition, but I always say as a rule of thumb, when you look over at my map that I have on the wall of the Roman Empire, if you can actually tell that there is territory being shown as far as the land colored in green with an outline, then it's a large island. So there are plenty islands that obviously are so small on a map from that far away, you wouldn't be able to make them out. And so therefore, that is the definition. However, place constructions are also going to be applicable to three words, additionally to cities, towns, and small islands. And they would include, of course, the word for home, which is domus, domus. However, domus is what we call a heteroclite. A heteroclite is a kind of a word that is going to have a set of forms in more than one declension. Fourth declension, and you will find it sometimes expressed in the second declension. And by the way, as per usual in all of my videos, the pre-videos, there'll be some embedded items for you to obviously be able to put in and just for watching receive a 100. The second word that is going to be applicable with place constructions is rus, rurus, which is the word for countryside. It is neuter. And then finally the Latin word for ground, or one of them actually, and that is humus, humi, another second declension word. And so for these, in the place constructions, if you want to indicate motion towards a city, town, small island, you do not need a preposition. So preposition is going to be no-go, not necessary and not going to be expressed. And instead, it is merely going to have it expressed in the accusative case. If you want to go away from, or indicate motion away from cities, towns, small islands, domus, rus, or humus, you would merely put the city, town, or small island with no preposition. Again, you don't need those in the ablative case. And so I give you an example of these. If I want to say towards Rome, it's a first declension word, it would be Romam. If I wanted to say towards, and I'll pick a second declension, the island of Delos, which is a second declension, and it's a small island, it'd be Delum, no preposition. If I wanted to, and there are some cities, towns, and small islands, as a matter of fact, a lot of them, that are always in the plural, like, for example, Athens, Atenae, Atenarum, first declension, always plural, it would be Atenas. Or Carthage, Carthagenim. All of those, accusative, third declension, accusative, plural, first declension, accusative, second declension, accusative, first declension, merely indicates that you are going towards Rome, to Delos, to Athens, and to Carthage. Likewise, over here, I would do the exact same thing, except no preposition in the ablative. From Rome, no preposition in the ablative. From Delos, no preposition. Atenes, from Athens, and no preposition. Carthagine, from Carthage. Likewise, for each of these words that you see up here, it would be domum, to home, or just merely home. We do the same thing in English, whereas we say after school I am going to the store. We do not say I'm going to the home. We say I'm going home. And so, because we use that word so often, we also leave out the preposition, as it were. And that is your first embedded item, home. H-O-M-E. Home is your first item to be embedded. If you wanted to say, obviously, to the countryside, it would be rus. Now, why is it that? Because it's neuter, and the nominative and accusative are identical. And to the ground, now somebody falls, it would be humum. Likewise, if you wanted to say from home, it would be domo, no preposition, from the countryside, rere, and from the ground. Let's say, for example, the Athenians all thought that they were a big fancy word called autochthonous, that they came directly up from the ground. In Latin, that would be humo. So hopefully you're following along. That is for motion towards and motion away. Now, if you are dealing with being at a particular place, normally what you do is that you would use the preposition in plus an ablative. And so therefore, if I were to say that someone lives in Africa or at Africa, then I would of course have the following: in Africa. Or if I were to say someone lives in Sicily, at Sicily, in Sicilia. And that is how we express it. But both of those are not city, towns, or small islands. That is a continent, that is a large island, and so therefore it is not going to be applicable. But when it is a city, or town, or small island, you use what is going to be known as the locative case. Your locative case is going to be the case used to express what it looks like. And dependent upon what kind of noun it is, the locative case is going to look different. And there are three types. And so let's start with type number one. The first kind of locative is going to be nouns that are cities, towns, or small islands that are either first declension or second declension singular. For those places, and I'll give you examples of them down here in just a moment, they are going to be, for cities, towns, and small islands, the locative will look identical to the genitive. Now, when we see it in the actual context, it will not be in the genitive, it just looks like the genitive. Instead, it's going to be in the locative because it's giving us the location of that city, town, or small island. And so, give you an example of some of these that we just had a second ago. We have Roma, Romai. We've got, obviously, Delos, Deli. That tells me, obviously, that it is a second declension. And so, for its locative, if I wanted to say at Rome, it would be Romai, which looks like genitive, but instead it is locative, and for Delos it would be Deli. And thus, again, it looks like genitive, but it is actually going to be in the locative case. Now, if you were to consider both domus, domus, and humus, humi, looking at the heteroclite form of when it appears as the second declension, the way in which you would say at home is also then going to be, since it follows the parameters of a first or second singular declension word, domi at home, and humi on the ground, and that is how you then express the locative case in that instance. Your second type of locative is going to be if it is a third declension, again, singular. Now, to give you some examples of these, but first I can tell you what the locative is going to look like. And by the way, that is your second embedded item. Your second embedded item is the word locative. L-O-C-A-T-I-V-E. Let me spell it for you again so you'll put it in correctly. L-O-C-A-T-I-V-E. That is your second item to be put in. So for this, you're going to look and see that the locative is identical to the ablative. Now that is a problem because remember that ablative could be the case of expressing motion away from. And so if I were to give you some third declension singulars, let's say for example one of the cities of ancient Phoenicia, Sidon or Sidon, Sidonis, or I could go with another one. How about we go with Cowingtone? Cowingtone, Cowingtonis. Then both of its locatives would look Sidone and Cowingtone. Now when I look at both of those and I see that they are cities in the actual context of what I'm reading, I have to look at the context further because depending upon how it's being used, if it were Sidone, it could be either ablative from Sidon or it could be locative at Sidon. So if I were to have something along the lines of Marcus Sidone habitat, in which it says Marcus lives, you would not live from Sidon, you would say he lives in Sidon, he lives at Sidon. Likewise, if we still had Marcus, and I would have something like profectus est, and remember that is from the deponent verb proficisco or proficisci profectusum, set out, did set out, has set out, and again you were to have Sidone. Due to the context now, you know it is, obviously, ablative, in that it is from Sidon. So locative Sidone, ablative Sidone, they look the same. How are you going to know the difference between the two of them? You will know from context, and thus that is what you have. Now, to erase this and to bring up a point of importance, there are two words that are going to be exceptions to the rule of third declension singulars. And those two rules, or two exceptions, are going to be, one, the city of Carthage, Carthago, Cartaginus, and then secondly, the actual word rus ruris. Now, if I want to say to Carthage, Carthaginem, accusative. Away from Carthage, Carthaginae. But for whatever reason, for these two, their locatives don't look like the ablative. Their locatives are going to look like the dative case. And so how would we say at Carthage? It would be Carthagini, at Carthage. And how would I say in the countryside or at the countryside? Ruri. And those are the two exceptions, obviously, to the rule. Your third item that you need to put in for the Easy Free 100 is at the countryside in Latin. The word ruri, R-U-R-I. No macrons, remember, but rather R-U-R-I. Now, the last example of a word that is going to also have an expression for the locative case, and I suppose hopefully I have room over here, and I'll go back to writing in pink, are going to be for those cities, towns, and small islands that are going to be plural. So there are many cities that by their very nature are always going to be plural, and their locatives are also going to be just like the third declension singulars, looking exactly like the ablative. So to give you some examples of these, and hopefully I'm still on the camera, I'm going to trust that I am, you would have Atenae, Atenatum. The word Athens is always plural. You could also have here, of course, the famous Pompeii, Pompeiorum, always going to be plural. You also have here a city in the coast of Spain, Gades, Gaudium, which is modern-day Cadiz, off of which in 1805 the Battle of Trafalgar actually took place, but nevertheless that's neither here nor there. And so for these, again, you'll have to have the same decision with a word of the third declension singular. When you see it, is it ablative? Look at the context. Is it locative? Look at the context, and you will then be able to know. So if I wanted to say either from Athens or in Athens, it would be Atenis, and it would have that long is due to the ablative plural or locative plural. Same thing here, it would be Pompeiis, either from Pompeii or at Pompeii, either ablative or locative, dependent upon as to what is the context. And then finally, you would have Gaudibus, either from Gades or in Gades, dependent upon the context as to obviously what is it saying. If you were to have they live, it's probably in Athens. If you would have they depart, it would probably be from Athens. And so it depends upon the context as to whether you're dealing with is it locative, is it ablative, is it locative, is it ablative. Over here for first and second singulars, most of the time you'll be able to tell whether it is locative indicating a location or genitive. If you would say, sometimes it would be difficult necessarily, but I hate the government of a particular city versus I visit my friend. You would not say I visit my friend of Rome. You would say I visit my friend in Rome. I visit my friend in Delos. And those sorts of contexts will be able to obviously lead the way and help you to know which one you are dealing with. And so therefore, your last word that you were going to put in is indeed Gaudibus. G-A-D-I-B-U-S, Gaudibus. And thank you for watching. Hopefully now you understand the nature of place constructions. Thanks so much.